Righty, so welcome back to NZ Mopro Customs. So I've been watching Karl's video. I'm just at home doing a couple little messages, but I was watching Karl's video earlier, and I left a comment um, on it. He's hard, I guess you'd call it hard mount or rigid mounted this deck of his ramp truck to the chassis, and what he's done is not a bad start, but I worked in the trucking industry for quite a long time. I drove trucks here in New Zealand, plus in Australia, and here I fitted a lot of tyres to trucks as well. I worked in the tyre industry, heavy tyre industry. Now, most trucks, like I'm talking semi type sort of stuff, but with a rigid frame that would have a deck bolted to it like this are not solid mounted. What they would be, especially here in New Zealand, I'm not sure about other countries, but what happens is if you solid mount it, with the twist and the flex the chassis is driving down the road, with weight on it and whatever, it will tear these bolts, or break, weld, or tear, whatever. What they have here in New Zealand is normally they have a U or a plate down the side of the chassis with a tongue on it, basically, with a tipped out edge, and then one on the other side. Sometimes they'll have a U that slips over the chassis, or the mounting points, and they'll have a bit of rubber or something in there with maybe a couple of screws that go down through the bottom plate, but the bolts themselves will be really long. They could be 4 inches long, but they'll have almost like a valve spring underneath, but not a valve spring. But so when the chassis flexes, those bolts can move, and normally depending either the front or the back of the chassis, or maybe even both, they'd have like a U in here, and then off the deck they'd have a piece that comes down with a pin in it. Now that would be, it wouldn't be captured, but it's just so the deck can't move backwards and forwards, but it'd have like a U with a big pin, maybe like a hole in the chassis with the thing, and then that would be slotted too, so it can move up and down, but the deck can't move backwards and forwards. Maybe some rubber in there as well, just so it can move with the flex of the chassis, because the steels will flex at a different rate, and if it's rigid mounted, it's likely to break the bolts or tear something or something like that. I just would hate to see them friggin' be forever fighting shit like that happen. But yeah, it's only going to be, a decent length. I used to drive like fertilizer trucks and gravel trucks and all that sort of stuff, and most of them, depending whether they were tip decks or whatever, but if they're solid flat trays, or even a sheep crate or cattle crate, they were made so they could move. So if the chassis flexed, the rate of the crate would be moved differently, and they'd have like a big massive spring through the bolts, through the bottom of the bolt. So the bolts would be at least 5 inches long or something like that, and they'd have a good spring so they could crush up, to half the length or whatever. So like just as things flexed, it couldn't move backwards and forwards or sideways, but it just allowed those pieces, and that would take up that twist, as things would move independently. It's just, I'd hate to see something tear off or break off or turn to crap on the poor fella. Just sometimes, like, it's an easy oversight, and I've seen other people do it too. But yeah, it's a really common thing here in New Zealand. Like I said, I don't know about other countries, but that's the way that most trays or bodies or whatever are mounted to truck chassis. But yeah, like they would normally have a U on the back of the chassis, like in this rail, or right at the back sort of type thing. Or at the front, so that chassis that tray can't slide backwards and forwards, so it captures that, but the bolts that way allow it to move up and down and flex. So it's still solid mounted, but it's got some give in it. Yeah, and like it would have like a rubber plate between each mounting point, or like say half an inch of rubber or whatever, with some big flat things like the rubber can't move, but it can be replaced as it gets worn out. Or even some of them have not even nylon strip, like a big nylon sort of top strip. So as it wears away, at some point you can lift the chassis up, cut those off or unscrew them and put some new pieces in there. Or replace the springs if they happen to break, or if the bolts happen to break, you can replace the bolt and spring. And like it would be like nylock nutted, double nutted at the bottom sort of type thing, so they can't come undone, but shit can move when it needs to move, instead of being rigid mounted and tearing bolts off and cracking chassis and shit like that. Just a little heads up for you, Carl. It's a really common here. You probably, if you hunted through some, if you've got a mate that drives semis or something like that or whatever, you go have a look at some of those type body sort of type things. Some truck and trailers, if they're just a permanent flat deck or whatever, on a trailer, it might be, the whole thing might be built together and it'd be welded together. But if it's something like this where it's an independent tray and it's bolted like that, it'll be sprung loaded, and so it can move.